The air hung thick and heavy, saturated with the scent of damp earth and wilting jasmine garlands. Monsoon season pressed down on Wat Ban Rai, the small temple community nestled beside a muddy, swollen tributary of the great Chao Phraya River. Rain, sometimes a gentle drumming, sometimes a furious roar, had been the world's dominant sound for weeks. Inside the temple grounds, life continued its quiet rhythm, dictated by the tolling of the dawn bell and the soft padding of monks' feet on wet stone. Mali moved through this rhythm with practiced grace. Young, barely past 20, her life was woven into the fabric of the temple. She swept fallen leaves from the Ubosot steps, her movements economical and serene. She prepared the monks' single daily meal, her hands deftly arranging rice and simple vegetables. She tended to the small herb garden behind the kuti dwellings, her fingers gentle on the stems needed for Luangpho Nisit's remedies. Her devotion was quiet but absolute, a legacy from her parents who had served the temple before illness took them. Wat Ban Rai was her world. Luangpho Nisit, the elderly head monk, her anchor. The peace, however, felt fragile this season. Kun Vichai, a wealthy merchant with recently acquired official standing from the burgeoning capital downstream, had been visiting more frequently. He arrived in an ornate boat, his silk fanung shimmering, his manner radiating impatience beneath a veneer of polite inquiry about the temple's well-being. His eyes, small and sharp, lingered not on the serene Buddha images, but on the strategic curve of the riverbank where the temple sat, the prime location for a new trading post. Luangpho Nisit, his face a mask of calm wisdom, deflected Vichai's veiled questions about land deeds and river access, but Malay felt a knot of unease tighten with each visit. The monk was respected, but Vichai represented a different kind of power, one rooted in coin and connections, indifferent to ancient merit. One afternoon the sky turned an ominous bruised purple. The wind rose from a whisper to a shriek, tearing at the broad leaves of the banana trees. Rain came not in drops but in solid sheets, blurring the world beyond the temple walls. The river, already high, churned violently, its brown water thick with debris. Mali secured the shutters on the small library pavilion, the wind snatching at her simple cotton blouse. Even Luangpho Nisit looked grave as he chanted evening prayers, his voice a low counterpoint to the storm's fury. The storm raged through the night. Sleep was impossible. Mali lay on her thin mat in the small dwelling allocated to temple servants, listening to the roar of the wind and the crash of water, praying for the safety of their small community. Just before dawn, the worst seemed to pass, the wind lessening, the rain softening to a heavy, persistent downpour. As the first grey light filtered through the clouds, Mali ventured out. The grounds were littered with broken branches and sodden leaves. Near the riverbank, where the water still lapped dangerously high, she saw it, a shape tangled in the reeds and driftwood, unnaturally still. Her heart pounded. Fear warred with duty. Calling out for others, she approached cautiously. It was a man, young, perhaps mid-20s, unconscious, face down in the mud. His clothes were torn, simple traveller's garb. A dark bruise marred his temple, oozing slightly. As Mali and two early-rising villagers carefully turned him over, she gasped. Beneath the mud and grime, his face was pale but well-formed, and on his left shoulder, partially visible where his shirt was ripped, was the faded blue ink of a sakyant tattoo, intertwined naga serpents, guardians of water. He was breathing, shallowly but alive. Luangpho Nisit arrived, his calm presence instantly soothing the small knot of anxious villagers. He knelt beside the stranger, his experienced eyes assessing the injury. "He lives," the monk stated simply. "The river takes, but sometimes it also gives. Bring him to the empty kuti near the banyan tree. Malay, prepare bandages and boiled water." There were murmurs. A stranger washed ashore like driftwood, bearing a sakyant whose meaning none immediately recognized. It felt like an ill omen to some, especially with Kun Vichai's shadow looming. But the monk's word was law, his compassion absolute. They carried the unconscious man into the simple dwelling, laying him on a clean mat. Malay gently cleaned the wound on his temple, her touch light, her heart filled with a mixture of pity and apprehension. Who was he? And what trouble might he bring to their precarious peace? He stirred slightly as she worked, a low groan escaping his lips, but his eyes remained closed, lost in the darkness that had claimed his memory. Weeks bled into one another under the relentless monsoon sky. The stranger slowly recovered consciousness, then strength, but his mind remained a blank slate. He knew nothing. Not his name, his home, his family, not even the skills his lean, wiry body suggested he possessed. He spoke little, his dark eyes filled with a profound confusion and a deep, haunting sadness. Luang Fo Nisit, seeing the flicker of spirit beneath the bewilderment, gave him a name, Kla, meaning brave. "For," the monk explained gently, "it takes courage to face the world without knowing your place in it." Kla accepted the name, the shelter, the simple food, with quiet gratitude. He tried to make himself useful, following Mali's gentle instructions for chores around the temple. He swept leaves, carried water, helped mend fences damaged by the storm. His body worked willingly, but his mind remained adrift. He felt like a ghost inhabiting someone else's skin. He would often find himself near the riverbank, staring at the swirling brown water, a vague sense of connection warring with a primal fear he couldn't understand. He'd pick up pieces of driftwood, his fingers tracing the grain, feeling an echo of familiarity that dissolved the moment he tried to grasp it. The frustration gnawed at him, a constant ache behind his eyes. Mali watched him, her initial apprehension softening into compassion. She saw the diligence in his work, the honesty in his confused eyes, the way he lowered his gaze respectfully before the monks. She began leaving small offerings of fruit near his kuti, finding quiet moments to speak with him, not asking questions he couldn't answer, but sharing simple stories of temple life, of the rhythm of the seasons, of the birds that nested in the ancient banyan tree. "Your hands," she murmured one afternoon, watching him struggle to tie a complex knot while mending a fishing net, "they seem to remember things your mind has forgotten." He looked down at his own hands, calloused yet strangely deft in their failed attempts, and a fresh wave of frustration washed over him. "Who am I, Mali?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Without a past, am I anyone at all?" Her heart ached for him. She had no answers, only the quiet solace of her presence. Champa, Mali's loyal friend, remained wary. "Be careful, Mali," she warned, her fingers flying across the loom where she wove intricate patterns into silk. "A man without memories is like a boat without a rudder. He could be anyone, a good man fallen on hard times or a thief escaping justice. And Kunvichai circles like a crocodile, waiting for any excuse to cause trouble." Champa's words proved prophetic. Kunvichai returned, his ornate boat mooring near the temple landing. His eyes immediately fell on Kla, who was helping repair a section of the wooden walkway. Vichai's gaze sharpened, lingering on Kla's build, his movements, the partially visible sakyant. "Luang Fo," Vichai addressed the monk, his tone smooth but edged with steel, "your compassion is renowned, but harbouring unknown vagrants can bring misfortune. There are whispers in the district of runaway debtors, even criminals seeking refuge." He looked directly at Kla, a dismissive yet calculating expression on his face. "Does this one have a name? A history?" Luang Fo Nisit met his gaze calmly. "He is Kla. The river brought him to us, injured and without memory. We offer shelter, as is our way." Vichai merely grunted, but his eyes held a new intensity as he studied Kla. He recognized something, perhaps not the face, but the build, the tattoo's style, something that clicked with the memory of a debt owed by a certain boat-builder's family upriver near the ruins of Ayutthaya. A family whose skilled son had reportedly set off to fulfill an indenture contract months ago and vanished. An idea began to form in Vichai's shrewd mind. This nameless man could be useful. Over the following weeks, the pressure mounted. Vichai didn't confront the temple directly again, but his influence spread like ripples in the water. Rumours intensified. Wat Ban Rai was sheltering a dangerous man, defying local authority, disrespecting tradition. Fewer boats stopped at their landing to trade. Some villagers grew fearful, their initial acceptance of Kla curdling into suspicion. They remembered Vichai's power, the debts he held over many families. Mali felt the change keenly. The shared smiles became hesitant glances. The easy chatter quieted when Kla approached. She defended him fiercely to Champa. "His heart is good, I feel it. He works hard, he harms no one." "A good heart doesn't stop a powerful man like Vichai," Champa retorted, though her own gaze on Kla held less suspicion now, replaced by a worried sympathy. Kla felt the shift too. The isolation pressed in on him, amplifying his sense of incompleteness. He saw the worry in Mali's eyes, the anxiety in Luang Phonisit's calm facade. A fierce protectiveness rose within him, directed at this small community that had shown him kindness, at the gentle woman whose presence had become his anchor. This feeling warred with his own helplessness. How could he protect anyone when he didn't even know himself? His frustration drove him to work harder, to prove his worth through sheer effort. One afternoon, struggling to fix a wobbly leg on an old teakwood table in the sala, his hands suddenly moved with an unexpected certainty, fitting a wooden wedge with precise force. The table stood firm. He stared at his hands, bewildered, a flicker, then gone. But Mali, watching from the doorway, saw it too, a silent confirmation of the skill buried deep within him. Their eyes met, a shared moment of surprise and nascent hope, strengthening the fragile bond between them. The air felt charged, the quiet intimacy deepening even as the external threat grew larger. The monsoon began its slow retreat, the rains lessening, the river receding slightly, leaving behind glistening mudbanks. But the tension surrounding Wat Ban Rai did not ebb. Kun Vichai, sensing the community's isolation and vulnerability, decided it was time to make his move. He arrived not alone, but with 2 uniformed guards dispatched from the nearest district office, men whose loyalty was likely secured by Vichai's influence or coin. They strode onto the temple grounds with an air of officious authority, disrupting the morning calm. Vichai, smug and confident, addressed Luang Phonisit, who stood waiting calmly before the Ubosot. "Luang Pho," Vichai announced, his voice carrying across the compound, "your defiance ends today. You've been harbouring a known fugitive, a debtor who fled his lawful obligations." He pointed a thick finger towards Kla, who was stacking firewood nearby. "This man, Kla, is wanted. By sheltering him, you forfeit the respect due this temple. Furthermore," Vichai continued, pulling out a scroll that looked vaguely official, "questions have been raised about the temple's legitimate claim to this valuable land. I am here with these officers to rectify the situation." His implication was clear: surrender the man and relinquish control of the land, or face the consequences. Villagers gathered, faces pale with fear. Malay stood near Luang Phonisit, her hands clenched, her heart pounding. Champa watched from the doorway of her weaving hut, her expression grim. As Vichai savoured the moment, a frantic shout broke the tense silence. A young boy ran into the compound, breathless. "Luang Pho, Mayai downriver, the fever! It's worse! We must get her to the healer upstream, quickly." Mayai was a beloved elder. The news sent a fresh wave of panic through the onlookers. The river, though lower, was still swift and treacherous. The only vessel large enough and sturdy enough for such a journey was the temple's main transport boat. "Prepare the boat," Luang Phonisit commanded instantly, his attention shifting to the immediate crisis. But another cry went up. "The boat! During the last storm, a log hit it. There's a hole in the hull." Despair settled over the small crowd. Vichai watched, a cruel smile playing on his lips. Their desperation served his purpose perfectly. He gestured to his guards. "See! Misfortune follows this place. Seize the fugitive." The guards moved towards Kla. Malay cried out. Luang Phonisit stepped forward, placing himself between Kla and the guards, his slight form radiating immense moral authority. "Wait," he commanded, his voice quiet but firm. At that moment, something broke inside Kla. The shouts, the fear, the sight of the damaged boat, the desperate need, it all coalesced into a single point of unbearable pressure. He felt drawn to the riverbank, to the large wooden boat pulled partially onto the mud. He pushed past the stunned onlookers, his movements driven by a force he didn't understand. He reached the boat, his hands running over the damaged planks. And then, it happened. Like a dam bursting, memories flooded him. Not a gentle stream, but a torrent. The smell of teak sawdust, the feel of a specific chisel in his hand. His father's voice, stern but proud, explaining the curve of a hull, the weight of the family debt, the storm, the crushing blow to his head, the roar of water. His eyes, moments before filled with confusion, cleared with shocking intensity. He saw the damage, a stove-in plank near the waterline, a split seam weeping water. His hands, his body, moved before his conscious mind caught up. "Rope!" he yelled, his voice clear and commanding, utterly unlike the hesitant tones they knew. "Hardwood planks! From the old Sala repairs! Mallet! Pitch!" Villagers scrambled, startled into action by his certainty. He worked with feverish speed and startling expertise. His hands flew, selecting wood, shaping it with borrowed tools, fitting it into the breach with an uncanny precision. He directed others, his instructions concise, technical, using terms for boat building none of them fully understood but obeyed instinctively. The clumsy, uncertain Kla was gone, replaced by a master craftsman consumed by his task. As he worked, his torn shirt shifted, fully revealing the sakyant on his shoulder. Luang Phonisit's eyes widened slightly. The intertwined nagas. It was the mark associated with the Boran family of boat builders from Ayutthaya, masters of their craft for generations, known for their skill and the protective blessings etched onto their skin. A family rumoured to have fallen on hard times after the floods. Mali watched, tears streaming down her face, tears of awe, relief, and overwhelming love. This was the man she had sensed beneath the amnesia, the skill she had glimpsed in fleeting moments. Vichai stared, his face contorted with disbelief and rage. This complicated everything. "He's putting on a show," he blustered. "Seize him." But the guards hesitated, caught between Vichai's order and the undeniable display of Kala's skill, the urgency of the situation, and Luang Phonisit's unwavering presence. With a final resonant blow of the mallet, Kla secured the patch. He quickly applied heated pitch to seal the seams. "It will hold," he declared, straightening up. He turned to face Kun Vichai, his gaze direct, his posture no longer hesitant but strong, grounded. "My name," he said, his voice ringing with newfound certainty, "is Kla, son of Arun Boran, boat builder of Ayutthaya." He touched the Naga tattoo on his shoulder. "This mark confirms my lineage." The revelation hung in the air. The guards looked uncertainly at Vichai, then at Luang Phonisit. The officials seemed deeply uncomfortable, witnessing Vichai's blatant attempt at manipulation, exposed by Kla's dramatic recovery and the clear emergency. Luang Phonisit spoke, his voice calm but carrying undeniable weight. "This man is no fugitive, but a skilled craftsman who sought refuge here after misfortune. His skill has just saved a life, perhaps many. Your accusations, Kun Vichai, are baseless and cruel." He looked pointedly at the officials. "Wat Ban Rai has served this community for generations. We yield to no threats based on greed." The officials exchanged glances. Vichai's scheme had unravelled spectacularly. His pretext was gone, his ruthlessness laid bare. With muttered apologies and avoiding Vichai's furious glare, the officials signalled their withdrawal. The guards followed suit. Kun Vichai was left standing alone, his face flushed with impotent rage, his authority shattered before the eyes of the community. With a final venomous look at Kla and the monk, he turned and stormed back towards his boat, defeated. The immediate crisis passed. The repaired boat was launched, carrying the sick Maiyai upstream towards the healer. A collective sigh of relief went through the crowd, followed by murmurs of wonder directed at Kla. He stood by the river, watching the boat disappear around the bend, feeling the solid ground beneath his feet, the weight of his rediscovered past settling onto his shoulders. It was heavy, laden with his family's troubles, but it was his. Later, in the quiet shade of the banyan tree, Kla sat with Mali and Luang Phonisit. He told them what he remembered, his name, his family, the workshop ruined by floodwaters, the crushing debt, his agreement to indenture, the storm that had stolen his memory but somehow delivered him here. Gaps remained, details were hazy, but the core of his identity was restored. "The river brought you here for a reason, Kla Boran," Luang Phonisit said softly, his eyes kind. "Your path forward is now yours to choose." Kla looked at Mali. Her eyes shone with unshed tears, but also with unwavering trust and affection. He thought of the weeks of confusion, the kindness shown by her and the monk, the sense of peace he had found within these temple walls, even amidst uncertainty. He thought of Kun Vichai's greed and the vulnerability of this community he had somehow come to care for. His skills were needed here. His heart was here. Weeks turned into months. The monsoon ended, replaced by the clear skies and gentle breezes of the cool season. Sunshine dappled the temple grounds. Kla Boran, no longer the nameless stranger, became an integral part of Wat Ban Rai. He established a small workshop near the river, his expert hands repairing the community's boats, crafting new fishing vessels, even teaching some of the younger boys the rudiments of woodworking. His presence brought a renewed sense of security and prosperity to the temple landing. He worked tirelessly, planning how he might eventually address his family's debt, perhaps by sending money earned from his craft, or seeking fair arbitration now that Vichai's local influence was diminished. But his life was anchored here now. One late afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows across the water, Malay brought Kla a simple meal of rice and grilled fish. He was meticulously carving a small wooden elephant for a village child, his brow furrowed in concentration, the movements of his hands fluid and sure. He looked up as she approached, his eyes clear and filled with warmth. He set aside his carving, taking